Good afternoon. I'd like to call the third regular meeting of the Meridian Parks and Recreation Commission to order. Rachel, if you'd be so kind, could you call the roll, please?
Yes, thank you. Dom Gelsomino.
Present.
Joe Greer is absent. Keith Bevan is absent. Jennifer Bobo.
Present.
Abby Hutchins is absent. Michelle Jensen.
Present.
John Nesmith.
Present.
Craig Steele.
Present.
Jessica West is absent. And Councilman Brad Hoagland.
Present. Thank you so much, Rachel. 5 being present, 4 absent or excused. The Parks and Rec Commission does have a quorum to continue. May I have a motion to adopt the agenda for tonight's meeting? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda has been adopted. Item 3, approval of the minutes from our second general regular meeting of the Meridian Parks and Recreation Commission from February 12, 2020. Do I have a motion for the approval of last month's minutes?
Mr. President,
Commissioner Steele.
I'd like to make a motion that is this for the minutes for the last meeting?
Yes, it is.
Approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Commissioner Jensen has seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So ordered. Item 4 is our announcements. We have announcements on our Spring Pathways Tour on April 8th, which is going to be our next meeting. It is our special meeting of the Parks and Recs Commission versus our regular meeting here in the City Council chambers. And Steve Sidaway, that is yours.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. Our next regular meeting is our annual Spring Pathways Tour. We pray for good weather, as usual. We've really lucked out the last several years, so we hope to do the same. We don't have a proposed route for you yet to weigh in on. We would ask that if you have specific sites that you would like to visit, that you let us know. You will be hearing tonight a presentation on pathway priorities that I think will lead to a lot of great ideas for where maybe we will want to go. So rather than spoiling that, I will maybe we can just reconnect on this at the end of that presentation and just maybe talk about whether seeing some of the potential future pathway priorities should be a focus, or if you have something else in mind. With that, I'll just pause and ask, are there any specifics that you know you want to see based on recent discussions? We've had pathway projects on the agenda for the last several meetings. So any initial thoughts that I should be aware of?
Mr. President?
Commissioner Jensen.
I think this was a topic last time. Really, I would love to get an understanding of kind of our South Meridian environment and what we have available for us down there, what obstacles we have for us, especially with the growth, or I should say the explosion in growth with homes and people on the south side, especially with single families and so forth.
Yes,
I agree.
that was my first.
Ms. Kim.
That was my first thought as well, without having done any particular strategizing. That's kind of a new frontier for all of us for bike tours. So good idea.
And it may even be that depending on what we identify in terms of bike connectivity, it might be that the majority of this one's best done by van, like we have done in the past, so we can go to multiple different sites as opposed to one route. But we will work that into the discussion. Thank you. Any other thoughts?
Last year our focus was the northwestern pathways. And so in addition to the southern pathways, I'd also like to explore the northeastern pathways that connect with Boise, city of Boise.
Okay.
And
Hear more about that tonight too.
Absolutely.
So.
Looking forward to it.
Okay.
Any additional comments, concerns? Wonderful. Our second item, again, Steve, the floor is yours for the Renaissance Park update.
And I'll just take the next two if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Combine it with the Champion Park dedication. So our The two new art pieces that the commission has been part of weighing in on, helping us select and get ready for, are now complete, which is wonderful. We're very excited that they're ready. We would like to hold a public dedication with a small ribbon cutting. We have selected as dates for those the first 2 Thursdays in April. Our plan right now is to move forward with those. They will both be at noon. So if you would be available, we would love to have you join us. Renaissance Park would be the first of the two on April 2nd. And then the very next week, we would meet at Champion Park for the dedication of its art piece on the 9th. So I guess with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions from the commission? Steve, I've gone to see the Renaissance Park art, and it's breathtaking. It really is. I'm excited to see the Champion Park art as well. Moving forward, we have upcoming events from Shelley Houston. Shelley, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm sorry my phone rang, but it was someone offering me free pizza, so it was clearly an emergency. Anyhow, you've got the flyer describing our two park art dedications. So I'd also call attention to another piece I gave you talking about our Arbor Day celebration. If you haven't done our Arbor Day with us for the last couple years, it would really be a treat if you're able to attend. We have a national, he's an educator and entertainer who specializes in trees, and named Tim Womack. And he comes and he does kind of an indoor assembly with the students that's very engaging and interactive, and he's got props and musical instruments, and it's wild and crazy, and prizes. And so we'll do that for about, I'd say, 30 or 40 minutes. Then we move the party outdoors onto the schoolyard where we help them. We're going to plant, I think it's a type of elm tree. It would be a chance for you to meet our new city arborist, Matt Perkins. So he'll be leading that effort. And again, for the, I think, 17th or 18th consecutive year, Meridian will be awarded its designation as a Tree City USA from the Arbor Day Foundation. So that's nice. Beyond that, I would just have you notice that the State of the City address is creeping up on April 22nd. So that might be something you wish to attend. Coffee with the Mayor in April is also at a location that you might be curious about. It's on April 14th. It's at the new Vertical View Climbing Gym. And so if that interests you at all, we would certainly love to have you at Coffee with the Mayor. Beyond that, there's prescription drug take-backs and document shreds and all the usual things. Our outdoor activities really kick off with Unplug and Be Outside Week on May 2nd with our kickoff event, and then all that following week for the next 7 or 8 days, there'll be all sorts of free activities and events for kids and families, and we'll publish a big detailed agenda for that soon. I think that's all, and we've got our upcoming commission meetings you'll keep your eye on. Any questions or concerns?
Any questions from the commission? If not,
Okay.
Shelley, Steve, thank you so much for your updates.
Yes, hope to see you at our events.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is new business, with our initial update is Pathways Priorities by our very own Kim Warren.
Good evening, Mr. President and Commissioners and Craig. And I will apologize to the latter because this is graphic intensive, this presentation, and I'm hoping you can picture it well enough because it would mean more if you
Actually,
were here.
Kim, we are streaming the presentation,
so he
he and anyone else can watch it online.
Craig will be one of the 3 people
Right?
that watches
We'll
the
have-
video.
we will, yeah, we'll increase our audience by a third tonight. Anyway, so I will get started. So Pathways update, just in terms of moving forward and figuring out a direction to go with pathways for 2020. We have had a change of administration, and I feel like Mayor Robert, or Robert as he likes to be called, he's very pro-pathway, very excited to add some mileage and make some connections, and seems to be attacking it in a good way out of the gates. So we met with him initially, and he encouraged us to look for new projects, and also not just wait for development. Development has gotten us a lot of mileage and connectivity, and it's been wonderful. But there are areas where either that won't happen or we could make it happen more quickly. So we're switching mindset just a bit. So we took another detailed look at the city, the Pathways Master Plan, land ownership. We have a new GIS person who's been really responsive and really helpful, and I think is going to improve our map graphics. So I'm excited about that. But we look to find potential projects where ownership is simple, and I'll talk about that in just a minute, and also places that make key connections between existing stretches of pathway that would be a couple, 3 miles, except for X, and also projects that are achievable within a reasonable amount of time. So we did take another look. So the map that you're not really expected to be able to read here, the pink areas, and they're actually small pink areas and they're highlighted in a purple color, that was our public land ownership map. So we were looking for publicly owned parcels that would be CHD or Nampa Meridian. We're already taking advantage of a lot of those, but are there any that we're missing and could provide opportunities? There wasn't a lot. We thought we had a pretty good idea. There's some out here in the west, there's a little bit down here in the south, so I'll talk about some of that. We also looked at HOA properties where there could be a single owner or very few easements that need to be obtained. And the other thing that kind of made our ownership description simple was maybe there's a single owner, the John Nesmith pathway at McMillan and Locust Grove, as I've started to think of it, where it's a private owner, but there are 2 parcels and it's just one person to talk to, and it seems like it would be a reasonable ask. So we kept our eyes open for those. That was kind of our criteria. And then we came up with a map, and again, this we run into the dilemma of how to show without zooming. So this is the north part of the map. You can see there's some black numbers and a couple of blue numbers. So the black numbers are potential projects that we came up with, about 12 of them, and I'll go into those in a minute. And also some pathway connection projects. Does he need to mute? That fit our criteria, for easy connectivity and filling in gaps and being achievable, but that we're already doing. So I'm just going to run through fairly quickly the projects we identified. So, and I'll try to give you a map orientation. We're in the north right now. This is the wastewater treatment plant. This is what we've called, ever since I arrived, Segment D, the pathway from 10 Mile to Black Cat. So our trailhead property is over here that we will be developing. And this is a really key connection. It's Bureau of Reclamation land. There's some things happening with ownership changes. Asterisks indicate where we would need pedestrian crossings. So this section is really key in terms of getting us out west to the Oaks, and then we're over here by Rita Husky Park on the east, and there's a big long run of 5 Mile Creek. So that was an easy one to spot. So here we are now just north of 8th Street Park, and I think we may have talked about this last time. There's a run where we can make a connection. It's a green space. So it's a common lot of an HOA. It needs an improved crossing. There's one now that people have been using, but in fact, I had a woman come in this week just to give me some ideas for North Meridian. She said, yeah, it's pretty rickety. But so that would be part of this second project, is to improve that crossing as well, and then make a connection down to Bud Porter and 8th Street Park. Linder is one of our identified priority connections north to Eagle. So improving Linder, it's running on the east side from Cayuse Creek to Chinden. So that's probably a half-mile stretch. And again, focusing on that. Some of it's pending, I think. So 4 and 5 happen to be on the same map. And again, Locust Grove is kind of like Linder, and then it's a priority connection to Eagle and north across Chinden. And it's spotty. There's some 10-foot pathway, there's some 5-foot sidewalk. It's pretty passable now, but to just really, to go in maybe as one project or lump several projects together and tackle that. And then, as I alluded to earlier, number 5, that little stretch on McMillan that would complete the mile-long connection by the Limp Canal on the north. The Meridian High School pathway, we have an easement for this now, so it's pretty straightforward. It would connect through a residential area and then up to the crossing at Fairview, Cherry. And then this is one that Mike and I have been talking to the HOA of Woodbridge about. So St. Luke's is over here, just east of Locust Grove. We're north of the interstate. There's an existing kind of throughway. It's a gravel path right now. In the Woodbridge neighborhood is really nice. It's kind of established, has some mature landscape, some people who really care about how it looks, and they're tired of the maintenance burden of this gravel pathway that needs work every couple of years. And they would like a paved pathway, so we have, in fact, a date to present to their HOA. I think it's in April. I don't remember exactly, but that's scheduled. And so we will talk, we'll just present the project and talk more about, answer any questions. But first, discussions seem really promising. They seem really excited about it. And then as a follow-on to that, this number 7 project is then making our way out to Locust Grove and Franklin here at the intersection. That's a little more difficult, not too many landowners. I think one of them is recently developed, but I'm not sure that we have pathway there. I haven't been out. But again, a key connection, it's also 5 Mile Creek. So yeah, it fits that priority pathway, relatively simple ownership, and make a key connection criteria.
Mr. President, can you go back?
Commissioner
I
Jensen.
can.
So on that number 7, Kim, by the way, from Franklin down through the back of that multi-home,
Here.
multi-use home, that is developed.
That is developed.
That is done.
Yeah, and
So
it's showing as
from
proposed on the
corner
map, so
down
I'll make a note of
to the major lot is done. It's that next stretch between where the storage facility owns and then this back lot.
sort of here. Yeah, this one is kind of an interesting situation, but again, there's not much that we need to acquire in terms of easements, so something to work on. Tuscany playground pathway connection down here. There's also, I think it's a city water tank there. I know I've looked at it before and thought, why no pathway? Anyway, there's a playground, kind of safety and access issue to resolve, but that's one we have on the list. And then a crossing associated with the Ridenbaugh. And then this is actually an HOA parcel that, well, there's HOA and ACHD down here kind of at the cape where the Ridenbaugh makes a big bend, where I think we would have that simple ownership situation where we might be able to get easements. This up here, we'll probably wait for a while. There's an owner who's she's doing her best to hold out. So that may be a while, but we have some key opportunities in this area to connect Tuscany south. And then this is just a little bit to the north. This is Gordon Harris Park, which I think abuts thank you, Mountain View. So Gordon Harris Park and Mountain View. And this is common lot ownership HOAs, and same down here. So there's some potential there that if they're amenable, we only have to ask a group or two and not 17 owners along the way. And then in general, kind of per Michelle's comment and our discussion of the pathway or the pathway tour, South Meridian connectivity, in our discussion with the mayor a few weeks ago, he had asked us to look at that because, yeah, I think we all know there is not a lot down there for pedestrians. So there are some newly conditioned pathways showing in orange, some pretty decent stretches here at, I think this is Sky Mesa, and this is Lavender Heights, which is actually north of Discovery Park, and they really drew the long or the short straw. I don't know how to say it, but this developer is putting in pathway all along the, help me out with the creek, I don't remember, the lateral in that area. And then we're looking at making a connection from all these new pathways through a common lot or an easement lot up to some existing pathway on Taconic that actually crosses and goes all the way into Hills Century Farm and 10 Mile Creek. So I think this will be really key in terms of getting people from the park on up, potentially even further north. So the other stretch I've lumped into South Meridian connectivity is, this is a newly conditioned pathway, but there's an owner who's staying put here, so the pathway wasn't able to go through, so it will need to cross and go out to Eagle Road and then come south to the intersection and the crossing to connect with other pathways. So there may be more, but I have them here in a list. It's quite a bit of text, but I just thought it might be useful in case we wanted to refer to any. We can go back, trying to stay kind of high level at this point and just capture a lot of potential ideas. They will still, we do have an audience with the mayor end of next week or on the 20th. So looking forward to that to get a bit more direction in terms of, yeah, let's go for it, or let's, what the priorities may be. We've got a budget process, and I think if we really try to significantly add mileage, we'll have some strategy or some strategizing to do as to how to most efficiently, get several done. So it's exciting, and there's quite a bit of little bits to connect. So I would stand for any questions or comments.
Do we have any questions?
I do, Mr. President.
Commissioner Bobo.
For segment D, the eastern part off 10 Mile and first one you did, do you have a timetable for the trailhead on the other side of 10 Mile?
Oh, yeah. And I actually did, I don't know that I have those slides with me, but had started to prepare an update that seemed a little redundant. So 10 Mile, let's see, off the cuff, the road is under construction. We just met with our consultant, and they'll finish up plans within a month or so. We're construction documents, so we'll have a bid package that's mostly complete. I have an application to get a certificate of zoning compliance through the city of sort of self-referential applying to Meridian just to get approved for that use on the site. And so that's on deck. And the roadway, I think, is due to be completed in the fall of this year. And we talked even about seeing if we could, they're currently part of our cost shares for them to do parking lot, but there may be an opportunity to have them do some of our concrete hardscape now that the plans are much more final. So we'll bid that probably in the fall. And assume that ACHD will be out of the way in time in the spring that we can get going on that, so that'd be 21.
Any additional questions? Kim, I had not, it's a bit of a question and a comment at the same time, because I feel like our commission really does go above and beyond in wanting to be the voice of our community members and our fellow citizens throughout Meridian by bringing up any comments that they bring to us or that we pick up on in our day-to-day lives throughout the community. And one of the comments that I've been getting recently from a few of the people that I've either encountered at the dog park or on pathways whenever we use them is there are certain segments of certain pathways none in specific that I could give you specific names tonight, but it's a general comment and observation that some dog owners have made on pathways is that on some of our pathways throughout the city, one end of the pathway will have the dog waste baggie holder and trash bag, and this is going to be a question for both you and Mike simultaneously. And then there won't be the presence of one of these waste bins and baggie holders until the very end of the other side of the pathway. And in between, one of the constructive critiques that I've received was that a lot of owners aren't picking up their dog waste because they don't want to hold the filled baggie until the very end of the other side of the pathway. Is there a way, without making it aesthetically unappealing or being a big thorn in the side, to, in some of the pathways where there is this large gap, insert one or two more or however many more dispensers as possible, so that we're having dog owners actually picking up the waste and tossing it, instead of having them not, and dog waste kind of compiling on the side of our pathways.
Mr. President, I think that's a good comment, and I notice the same thing even when I'm in Boise walking around. The people will use the bag, but they won't necessarily carry the bag, and it's kind of it's sort of a mantra, I think, of site designers, where you think, you put the trash cans out, people will use them. If they have to walk very far, they won't. I'm not sure and I will say also that I'm really excited that maybe we have stretches of pathway that are long enough that it's just too laborious to carry something that distance. I mean, that's a sign of connectivity, I think. But Mike would probably need to speak to the staffing and just the availability of people to, I think it'd be easy to install a trash can. It would be another thing to maintain it and keep it emptied. And
yeah, Mr. President,
Yes.
I don't know if I have anything to add. I mean, you try to maybe locate a dispenser at the beginning of the trail, and then a garbage can a little ways down, or maybe at the other end. I mean, there's thinking that people will grab a bag, and then if their dog goes to the bathroom, then they'll at least have it. We don't know where that's going to happen. I don't know. I've never heard that comment. It's interesting, and I know that we've been reviewing our budgets, and and one of the topics that's come up is how much money we spend on these plastic bags for people. So I don't think we should add more, but if there is one or more that are in the wrong spot, we should move them. Mm-hmm. If you get any specific feedback, send that to me, and we can take a look at it and say, hey, it's just in the wrong spot,
Right.
and let's look at it. Let's try to do it better. I guess I don't have anything
Sure.
more to add than that.
Absolutely. It was a comment that was brought up to me this week, so it just, it even caught me off guard, because that's an observation that I've never made myself, and so, but I felt it was the due diligence to bring that up tonight, especially on our Pathways update.
Mr. President?
Yes, Commissioner Jensen.
So I'm going to have to back Mike up here. I think there's an aspect of personal, responsibility as a pet owner to do what you're supposed to do, and we as the Park and Rec should not be, people shouldn't think that we have to step in for where people need to be personally responsible for what they're doing, what their pets are doing, and how they're behaving. I fully agree with Mike that if we have an area where something is in the wrong space, is not adequately available for people to access, yeah, move it. But we should not be adding additional dispensers or trash cans just because someone can't walk another 500 feet to go put something in the trash can.
Mr. President?
Yes, Commissioner Steele.
Part of this, too, kind of to lend something to the discussion, is we've talked about putting benches in the pathways and for people just to sit down and kind of take a break or, enjoy the weather, whatever. But if we were to add some benches along the ways, we could add those amenities with the bench to that.
I agree. To both your points, absolutely. I agree. I'm all for self-responsibility. When I walk Zeus, no matter how far the next trash can is, I tie the dirty baggie to his leash and we walk, so I don't have to hold it. But I felt it would have been, I would not have felt right if I did not bring that comment that I received up. So, but absolutely, Commissioner Steele, to your point, I think that would be a great, co-amenity installation if that ever was an availability. So, any other questions, comments?
Mr. President?
Commissioner Nesbitt.
The only thing I would add is maybe on your signage, if you ever replace a sign, just put a responsibility tag on it. So guilt people into doing the right thing. Or communicate what you want them to do the right thing. So
Absolutely.
Good idea.
Absolutely. Kim,
So-
thank you so much.
All right.
We really appreciate your update, and we're excited to work with you and the mayor on our new pathways.
Yeah, we're excited to see what we can accomplish too. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have a update on the City of Boise pathways. We are joined by, I'm assuming, Mr. Trevor Kesner, who is the City of Boise Parks Planner. Welcome, Mr. Kesner, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President, Commissioners. Are you driving this, Rachel? Okay. Again, my name is Trevor Kestner. I am a parks planner with the City of Boise, Parks and Recreation Department. Just was asked to be here by Rachel and Kim to just kind of give you a brief, kind of like 30,000 feet overview of where we're at as far as like parks and pathways, and especially where our two jurisdictions meet. So the Boise Parks Department has over 90, here's my slide. We have over 90 parks facilities that are managed and maintained by our department alone. So that's not citywide, that's just Parks Department property. That includes undeveloped parks, so we have quite a bit of inventory that we need to keep our eye on. So, I'll go back and I'll also say that the City of Boise also manages the Boise Urban Garden School, and we are also the lead agency on the Ridge to Rivers Partnership, which is basically a consortium between the Bureau of Land Management, the U.S. Forest Service, let's see if I can get all these in, Idaho Fish and Game, and there's one more, and I apologize that I can't remember what it is, but they help us manage the various trails and properties, open space that are within the foothills. So our facilities include 25 plus miles of Boise River Greenbelt, specifically that's paved pathway that's from the east end of our jurisdictional boundary all the way to basically the boundary of Eagle. And then also Garden City as well, as it branches off at the Boise Whitewater Park there. You can cross the river at the 36th Street Bridge and head over into Garden City's Greenbelt and head on into western boundaries. We also own the Boise Depot. We have 3 cemeteries, 2 full golf courses, 10 community centers, a senior center and art center, and we manage the Idaho Ice World, which is quite a ways out there and just kind of a lone facility. It used to have an outlet mall next to it, but most of the stores have gone away. But it's a really great facility for basically the region. So we're happy to have that. We also have the Foothills Learning Center, and we manage Zoo Boise, and we have 12 open space reserves that totals over 5,000 plus acres in the foothills. So there's my sales pitch. These are basically our Parks and Recreation comprehensive planning areas. They're broken down a little bit more finer grade for the Planning and Development Services Department. They're more specific to neighborhoods, but for our planning purposes, we've broken them down into these basic planning areas. So particular interest to you is the West Bench planning area and the Southwest planning area. So when I was preparing for your presentation, I kind of expected that I would just kind of drill down into these areas and see where our jurisdictional boundaries are and I apologize that I don't have a mapping software that I could zoom in as well, but hopefully my slides have got enough detail where we can take a look at that. So checking into the West Bench planning area, we've got the Charles McDevitt Sports Complex here that's right on Eagle Road, right across from Lowell Scott. And then we have essentially Eagle Road that is, meanders further south. And then so the basic line that we would follow is Cloverdale. So, and then the freeway divides both the north half and the south. So when we look at Greenbelt connectivity in the kind of the northwest area and the Eagle boundaries, we can see that there's quite a bit of development there just along the rim. There's a new roadway connection and a pathway connection that would connect with what is actually the foundation for Ada and Canyon County trails, which is this kind of burgundy line here that goes along. These parcels are actually owned by our city's Public Works Department. So the trail, the Greenbelt ends kind of here, and then the Fax Trail traverses over here. So Eagle is looking for a little bit better connectivity on the northern part of Eagle Road. So hopefully they can, negotiate some of that. But for the most part, the pathways in this area basically put folks back up on Chinden, and then they proceed on westward. We have some trail connectivity, and the lines that you're seeing on this map are basically the ACHD roadways to bikeways layer. So that's what's being highlighted here. And this is the YMCA and Boise Aquatic Center. So we call it Hobble Creek Park. We're putting in a bunch of new pickleball courts in this park this year. So next slide, we have the kind of KLEINER Park and Clover Meadow connection. This is a little bit further south. And this is, I apologize, I had a colleague that was supposed to join me this evening. She had a family emergency, and she's actually a transportation planner with Planning and Development Services Department, so she's a little bit more schooled in fine-grade pathway connections. But I know that for the Clover Meadow Drive, there was most recently a protected crosswalk installed in this area, so that improves connectivity to KLEINER Park and areas to the east. Going down a little bit further south, we have we're well aware of the kind of the railroad industrial corridor that kind of goes right through the middle of this where the railroad corridor is. We are working on a regional rail with trail initiative with Compass. So we hope to see some good potential connections coming out of that. Then a little further south is Franklin. I'm not sure what's going on this corner here. We'll have to wait and find out what that ends up being. And I apologize, our aerials are fairly recent, but they're probably a couple years old, so we're not going to be seeing a lot of the parcels that are there.
Mr.
Does
President,
anyone
may I
have any
just interrupt?
questions?
I have a question, if I may.
Mr.
Can you
Sidaway.
just orient us, Trevor, to the, I'm looking particularly at a lot of these blue lines and wondering if those are just,
Those are bikeway facilities, so those are the ACHD roadways to bikeways. So those basically are saying that there's bicycle facilities on the
Okay.
roadway, whether it be a sharrow, a
might be a
protected
Sharrow,
lane,
yeah.
or.
'Cause I don't think there's actual bike lanes
So I think that's
in
what the
those
colors are
neighborhoods.
delineating, is what facility is on the roadway there.
Okay, so green probably is bike lanes.
More than likely, if it's on Cloverdale, you're probably getting a semi, maybe some raised curb, maybe some traffic candles that would protect that bike
Okay.
lane, but yeah, that's essentially
Okay, that makes
what
more
you're seeing.
sense. I was trying to make them into pathways, but when we were on the
They are
previous
not
slide,
pathways, no,
and I was
they-
like, that's a road.
Yeah.
So it must just be an on-street bike
They follow-
route
yeah,
that's
they-
identified.
yeah,
Okay,
correct.
thanks.
And so we're moving into the southwest planning area. As we get south of the freeway, we start looking into some of our kind of newer developments that are not really occurring along the border. We're kind of built out in this area here, but we have some, or in here, and then we have some areas of opportunity over in this part of the boundary. Just to point out, we have the South Boise Loop Trail that runs right along this lateral. This is essentially Parks land, but it's undeveloped, and it just goes along the lateral. So, and I know that Kim has given some talks recently. We're also supportive of the Idaho Sierras Club initiative for canal pathways as well. So I know that you guys have had some successes with private landowners and getting some easements and moving that initiative forward. So we are also supportive of that. I think that's probably where we can have our greatest successes in this area. So drilling down into kind of the Overland Road and 5 Mile Creek area, we have some areas of opportunity where we can connect some, maybe some future development in this area or this area that kind of gets across Cloverdale and connects to some existing neighborhoods. We have some pretty large lot older developments here, but maybe some infill development will occur in the future where we can get some additional opportunities. Going a little further south, I believe this is, yes, this is the Ridenbaugh Canal, and I believe this is, you can see the streets, but you can't see the new parcels there, but this is, I believe, developing out quite fast. I believe there are actually homes built all the way this to here by now. So this neighborhood's probably going to need some good connectivity to this neighborhood to get some folks over to the Peppermint Park area. So I'm thinking that these two cul-de-sacs right here would be a really good way to potentially get that connectivity. So going a little further south to the 10 Mile Feeder Canal, which is essentially this guy right here as it flows down. I'm not sure what your guys' development patterns are in this area, but it looks like we're getting some neighborhood and energy centers here at this corner, but this would be a good potential connection here as well. Oops. Anyways, so if you have any specific questions on any of these slides, I'd be happy to go back, but I just wanted to just point out that this is our current annexation pattern in the southwest area. So the kind of the light green is Meridian's annexation, and then this is kind of where we're at as far as current annexations in this area. This, let's see here. I want to say, yes, it's this area here. So we're getting quite a bit of development in this area with some new roadway connections. We have a potential park site that's in this area here. I believe the development is called Syringa. But as far as advancing this direction, we're not getting a lot of movement there. And this area down here is the 10 Mile Creek area. And with our new mayor and administration, we don't really have a good gauge on what they see or have a vision for this potential area. So we're not really putting a lot of time and effort into this comprehensive planning area below that line. So with that, it's pretty high level. If you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to go back to some slides if you want to take a look.
Do we have any questions from the commission for Mr. Kessner? Ms. Warren.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thanks for your presentation, Trevor. If you don't mind going back, I guess, first of all, I would ask about Lake Hazel. Is there a possible connection along Lake Hazel? I know it connects to pretty far to the east.
Yeah, so
I'm wondering, pedestrian-wise, are there facilities there or plans for? I don't think you really showed it on a map. I'm just asking.
Well, we didn't really show it on the map, and it's hard for us to really put any effort into planning for areas that haven't yet been annexed. And we know that it's in our area of city impact, and it's within this comprehensive planning area, but you know, it's hard to say what we could get if we don't really control the land.
Are there plans for pathways should that property be annexed, or not necessarily?
Probably haven't drilled down that far into it yet.
Okay. Can you go back to the last slide when you mentioned the 10 Mile Feeder Canal?
Yes.
I know that north of Bot Lane, we have some pathway along the 10 Mile.
In this area here?
Actually, to your west just a little bit, a few of those squares, and down toward Bot is the next, yeah, like right in there.
In
you
here?
just trace the path. So we go about that far, and there's some debate as to, you know, if we continue that, is that a good way to make a connection? And it sounds like maybe that's pretty likely.
We would be really supportive of that.
Yeah.
We've looked at the 10 Mile Feeder as a really great potential connection because it's, you know, it's just an obvious
It does seem obvious.
choice. So
And then back maybe one more slide. So to the west, that is Movado, I think is the
I
sub
didn't know if it
development.
was Movado. You had mentioned Movado, but
Yeah,
think it might
and
be.
so we have pathway conditioned on the north, the north
This
canal,
one?
the waterway there, the south side of the north canal, and there's some through the site. There's a pathway on the south of the southernmost waterway. Is that the Ridenbaugh? I can't remember. I think it's the Ridenbaugh. So there's pathway on the south off the screen, and then it didn't continue along the south. So we have a cross connection through the site, but with the widening of Cloverdale, I'd love to see a connection to Boise there because we do have a fair amount of pathway, as you surmise there might be.
yeah.
And
So we have this connection here off of this cul-de-sac currently,
that'd be great, yeah.
and then I'm not really sure who owns this parcel. It may belong to the canal company itself.
And some of those drainage features are pretty formidable. I was out there as a pedestrian, but anyway, that definitely, yeah, good thought on that. I think those were all the comments I had for now, except maybe 5 Mile Creek. 5 Mile Creek is one of our priority pathways, so if there's potential there, that would be a priority to us.
So we're looking for greater pedestrian and bicycle facilities on this intersection for sure.
Okay.
I'm not really sure what the development pattern is west of the Cloverdale area. I believe we're getting into an area that might be, oh no, that's Movado Way right there.
Yeah.
So, gotcha.
Same. Oh, yeah.
So we're just a little bit further north.
So that's kind of where our areas of impact may
Yeah.
overlap.
Yep.
That's not very possible for pedestrians too. I think we're showing pathway on the south side of that irrigation feature a little bit further west. So, yeah, something to work
Okay.
on. And I think that's all that I have other than to say
Are
thank
these,
you for.
these look like these are a mature neighborhood. They've been there for a while. so-
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions?
Not for me, thank you.
Thank you so much, Kim. Any questions from the commission? Mr. Kesner, a question from myself. Not so much on the strategic side of the pathways planning for Boise's pathways, but we're in a culture right now that is very interested in the improvements of our environment and environmental stewardship. And has the Boise Parks Commission or the Boise Parks Department identified in its pathways any areas of opportunities for, when you're thinking of the, planting of plants and shrubs and trees, of planting any pollinator plants or any indigenous plants along the Boise's pathways?
We absolutely do. In fact, all of Boise's pathways we have of course, our landscaping and maintenance, standards as far as widths along the pathway. But whenever there's an opportunity to arrest any non-native invasives and replant with something that's drought tolerant and definitely with more pollinators like milkweed, things that are more environmentally friendly, we'll use every opportunity we have to enhance riparian habitat and essentially get away with removing manicured turf and kind of go with something that's a little bit more natural, less maintenance heavy. I don't know if you guys know, but we just kind of launched our most recent pesticide reduction program. So we've got a bunch of pilot sites within our park system that we're going to be testing out some new technique, not necessarily new techniques, but techniques that we haven't typically employed before, such as maybe more hand pulling, maybe mowing things a little bit higher, maybe not going after certain things like dandelion and clover in parks, because they do attract bees and kids tend to step on them, so it's not pleasant. But just try and reduce pesticide use in our parks, and we'll see how that goes and see how the public feels about how that's going as well. So,
Absolutely. I personally would be interested in hearing an update a year from now on that new pilot project. And just one quick additional comment. I want to congratulate Boise Parks on Dog Island. That was an incredible new amenity and strategic plan for the parks, as well as, just overall, great job on your guys' parks.
Thank you.
The people of the Treasure Valley really benefit from our two cities having the quality parks that we have. So congratulations are in order on Dog Island especially.
Thank you, Mr. President. Commissioners, I definitely feel everyone's pain when it comes to dog waste. It's definitely an issue, and citing specific waste stations can be very, very tricky because some folks just can't walk that extra way, or they just don't want to pack their waste with them. So I understand dog waste is also quite heavy, so filling those waste or emptying those waste stations more frequently has become something that we've been used to. We're also employing probably a new species of turf on Dog Island because the grass is just hammered.
Obliterated.
Absolutely hammered, so.
Especially on that down,
Especially.
slope where it goes into the water and into the river. It's just a mud mess.
Well, we put in some riprap and we've tried to stabilize it, but it's kind of being undermined. But the dogs love jumping in the water, so what are you going to do?
Also, a quick congratulations on the expansion of Zoo Boise. It's wonderful. I took my kids there, and they absolutely love the new exhibits in the new areas. So congratulations. Do you see any further expansion of Zoo Boise? I know there's a bit of a constraint with where it is.
We are constrained with the amount of space that is there, but with any rehab or remodel project, you have this lovely new facility. And so when you have these facilities that were there before, it kind of makes them look a little less stellar. So yes, there are additional expansion plans for the future.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mr. Kesmer. Appreciate your update today.
President?
Oh, yes, Mr.
Just
Sidway.
two quick things. The first is just maybe a light bulb moment for me that I want to point out. One thing I really learned is that our eastern boundary south of Victory that I thought abutted the city of Boise is actually Ada County, correct? So that's an area is not annexed, that I thought that area right there.
Yeah.
So that was an aha moment for me. Second is on the GIS side of things. We met last month with the city of Nampa. They shared their maps with us and agreed to send us a GIS file with their lines of planned pathways so that we'd like to put our lines with Nampa's and
We can
Boise's.
share layers. I think that's-
Would you share,
I
be
think
willing to
that's
share some layers
doable.
with us?
I mean, yeah, I'm not a GIS expert, and I'm sure that we have like security people that, say certain things are, proprietary, but I
I
don't
think we
see
all
why
provide
that
our
would
layers
be.
to Compass anyway.
Yeah.
But if maybe you would, if you would agree to help be a liaison for us with the GIS world in Boise, we might have Kim coordinate with you and see if we can get a GIS layer that we can create a map from.
Absolutely, Director.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sidway.
Right.
Alrighty.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Next up is our annual update from Julie Bokenkamp, who is the president of the Meridian Co-op Gardeners on the Kleiner Park Community Garden. Julie, welcome. We're glad to have you back.
Hello, Mr. President, Commissioners. I'm so glad to be back. Craig, I'm sorry you're not here. Is he still there?
Me too.
Hi. Anyway, my name, for those of you that don't know me, is Julie Bokenkamp. I run the community garden over in Kleiner Park. This will be year 8. Will be year 9 for the garden, but year 8 for me. The title of our annual report this year was Bees, Trees, and Generosities, and that had to do with the changes that happened this year at the garden. It was a stellar year for us. I can't tell you, every year is just better and better and better, and last year was just over the top, and we are so grateful for the partnership that we have with the city and with all of you that you're willing to take the time to listen to hear about our 2019 and I'm looking forward to sharing what we have in store for 2020. What do I need to do here to make this go forward? Is it just
You can either
enter?
hit the space bar or
Enter.
the down arrow or the right arrow,
right there?
I think.
We are so excited, we made the map. So this was really fun. Like, before we weren't on the map, this wonderful map. We're down there where it's circled in red, and the garden's actually in place, and there's words that say community garden. We're really super excited about that, and we're expanding. We're growing that area even bigger, more so than the garden, and I look forward to telling you a little bit more about that. This was a picture I shared from last year, but it just gives a nice overview that we are in the finest corner of that park. We're in the southeast corner of the park, directly behind CarMax, and there's a woman who has a business, Gardentronics, and it's a page for people in gardening. And she came out with her drone and took this picture for us. And it was just a beautiful time of year, early spring. We had just finished planting, probably in May, the middle part of the garden there. But we enjoy this view every Tuesday and Saturday. Absolutely love our location. We are, same group. We are a group of 30 people. They pay $35 to be a part of this garden, and we raise fresh organic produce for our families, along with sharing those overages with the Meridian Food Bank and another food bank on the bench called Community Ministries Pantry. Last year it was 7,132 pounds, about 1,000 pounds less than the previous year, and we attribute that to a very wet spring and an early frost, we think, this last year. We finished the year with 26 families, which is pretty amazing out of the 30. We unfortunately had quite a few families leave at the end of this year, and so we had 11 openings going into 2020. I had 20 people on a waiting list, so we had no problem filling those spaces. Number of people were moving out of state, one's pregnant, and we had a couple that wanted to just take a summer off. The garden tends to be fairly demanding. I wish I could tell you the stories of every person that's in this garden, because it's what makes our garden work. It's a unique group of people that never would have met each other had we not been a part of this garden. And we are from all corners, clear over in Nampa to clear up on Collister, clear down in Cuna, up in Eagle, who all come together to this garden in Meridian. We haven't had to minimize and say, okay, you have to be a person that lives in Meridian to be able to join this. So right now it's working fine. I introduced you to Dick Ross on my left. Last year he was the man who was run over by the boulder up in Grand Jean, and in 2018, and had a long recovery, but he was back this last year and is an instrumental part of our garden. He's a storyteller, and everybody loves him, especially the little ones. Christina is actually, she works for the Northwest Center for Alternatives to Pesticides, and she has been very helpful and was extremely helpful when we put together the pollinator garden that I'll talk to you about here in a little bit. Eric and his son have been with us now for about 5 years. Brody, she is attentive to every detail that I could ever need, and she took over the state fair, or the Western Idaho Fair activities this year. So that was one of our goals, was to have somebody to take that away from me and put somebody else in charge of that. Dale is just one of the hardest workers, and Annie has been with me since 2013. So there's 4 of us that are original to my taking over in 2013. We have a program for our youth. This last year, we actually had lost quite a few children from the year before, so we had a smaller group. We call ourselves Little Gardeners, although this year we're changing the name to Garden Explorers. We are anticipating 22 ages 0 to 12 in our 2020 sign-up. I just learned about another 6-month-old, so we're really, really excited about that. We drag them around in laundry baskets. They help with every aspect of the garden, from planting to harvesting. We've got rhubarb on the left, a brother and sister that were harvesting the rhubarb, and on the right, they're in the middle of a class, and I think at this point they're decorating a jelly jar to take their worm home in. We had a vermicomposting day where we were checking out how you vermicompost, basically putting vegetable scraps into this layered box, and then you collect the worm poop, and it's the best thing you can actually add to your garden. It's actually my granddaughter holding the worm in the center. She was very fascinated with that. And then on my right is they were making plant fossils. So we have classes set up for our youth. We have a number of teachers that take that job very, very seriously. And this year I've added, I think, 3 homeschooling mothers who I know will take it even more seriously than we've done in the past. We also do education in our community. This was Girl Scout Troop 83 who needed to meet the requirements of their gardening badge. They needed to tour a garden. They needed to explore garden design. They needed to plant seeds, and then they needed to do a seed experiment. So up in the top, they were planting, I believe it was green beans and sunflower seeds, and they were going to see which ones germinated faster and work on their growth. But here they were planting radishes for us. Flowers for the community. This blew up this year, and it's become, last year was the big year, that flowers, and that was the title of our annual report last year. It was the flowers. Well, I can't tell you that this just, it's doubled. It's just gone crazy. We were asked by a master gardener if she could be a part of the garden, not a paying member, not wanting any produce, but to coordinate flowers. And then the young girl in the center and her mother, she is a student over at a high school in Nampa taking floral design classes. She wanted access to flowers because she loves giving flowers away, which is a big part of our heartbeat. And so this is her delivering flowers to someone. We put together these flower arrangements. This was 30 more flower arrangements than we did last year. We did 63. We're up to 93. We've increased the variety of flowers that are going to be introduced into the garden this year, many of them for the cut flower opportunity. On the left, we introduced a community flower cutting day. We hope to offer 2 of those this year, where we invited the community. They had to sign up, but they came out to the park, they cut flowers, and with the master gardener's help, they learned how to put together flower arrangements. Anyway, 93 flower arrangements. This started, we had a woman in our garden who said, could we cut buckets of zinnias, maybe 5 years ago, and just deliver buckets of zinnias to assisted living facilities, and they could take the individual flowers out and put them into little vases on the tables to full-blown flower arrangements. So 93 of those this year. We are still entering the Western Idaho Fair, so we are very curious on what Garden City is planning to do with that property. We hear that developers are interested down there. I left my papers at home, but I'm going to try to remember the stats the best I can. We took home, let me just tell you this, we took home so many blue ribbons, 2nd place, 3rd, 4th place, largest Armenian cucumber, best to show on 2 of our zinnia collections. That's a big deal. We're just this little farm over there in Kleiner Park. Like, this is absolutely amazing that we won these zinnia collections up against these gardeners that are in there. I mean, it's just, and the best part about these they come with like big prize packages. So it's not like $5, you get like $40 or something when you win, a big ribbon like that. So we won $282 in prize winnings, along with a $10 gift certificate to Edwards. So we think it's awesome. This didn't make the annual report because I was thinking my annual report was getting a little long, but I wanted you to know about it. So one of our goals a number of years ago was to be able to plant some permanent habitat in or near the garden. And we slowly started just adding some perennials on the ends, and because the garden in the past was always cleared out. Anyway, we hatched successfully 2 nests of killdeer. They lay their eggs in the most unpredictable and worst location ever. This happened to be smack dab between 2 tomato rows before we ever set the tomatoes up. And so we just protected them, and we got to watch those little babies run around our garden, and they called each other. They chased the parents back and forth. We had a rabbit that came from the neighborhood, didn't belong to anybody in the neighborhood, big white rabbit that mowed down entire rows of beans and eggplant. And the neighbors were kind enough to let us set up a trap because we knew it was staying in a field nearby. So we set a trap up over there. It took us 2 weeks to catch that dang rabbit. But we took him out to the
Wascally
Humane
Wabbit?
Society. Yes. I mean, that thing was big. Like, what's that rabbit on that movie?
Roger Rabbit?
No. What's the big white rabbit in the old movie? It's an old-time movie.
Oh, I
Do you remember? You guys are all too young. Anyway, we have ducks. And if you see...
Is it Bear Rabbit?
No, what was... I can't remember. I'll think about it. It's like the big white rabbit. Anyway.
What was that, Commissioner Steele?
Is it Brer Rabbit?
No, it wasn't that one either. It's on an old movie. I'll think. Anyway, we had a duck lay 9 eggs in the middle of the strawberry patch. The only thing that was sad is we didn't see the eggs hatch. So we were really hoping to watch 9 little babies walk into the water. Anyway, so it's just been fun to see more wildlife. We also have a number of snakes that come out of the ditch behind there. So these next slides, most of them I'm just going to click through, almost like a slow movie. I want you to experience the KLEINER Park Pollinator Garden Project. As you pull into the maintenance yard on your right, there was a bare property that was there. And a year ago, I invited Mike out to talk about the possibility of planting fruit trees on that property. And he said, why would we plant fruit trees there when we could plant fruit trees in the holes out in the park? And so that got my mind thinking, like, what could we do with this property? And we were given the opportunity to apply for a grant. Last year, we talked about the difficulty in us applying for grants because we're not a 501c3. I called Idaho Botanical Gardens, told them who I was, and they asked if I would please submit the application, and they would work around that. And we were able to do that through Parks and Rec. They were able to deposit the check for us, dispense the money as needed, and submit a 1099 to Idaho Botanical Gardens to allow us to do that. So this was the work and effort of so many people. We needed $2,979 for that project on a minimal end. And I obtained in-kind donations of $2,000, including donations from the city of Meridian, and they gave us the additional $979. What I've since learned is when you have the opportunity to apply for a grant, apply for as much as you possibly can. But I wasn't quite there yet. This is the spot. So this is as you're pulling in, and it was a spot that had this lovely maple tree, a rather ugly irrigation box, a couple of basalt boulders, and some other evergreens. So I'm just going to start clicking, and there's 1 or 2 I would like to stop on, but I'll just, and let you. That is my husband. He's my best worker.
Talk about a honey-do list.
Yeah. Took us about 2 hours to plant this garden. We mapped the entire garden once it was done, so I know exactly where everything is. Everything is labeled. The irrigation box was rather ugly and not very attractive, and our master gardener suggested that we paint that eggplant purple. So that was the original plan, was to paint that eggplant purple. And we did that. And then we had some inspiration, and one of our gardeners said it would be really nice if we could paint that with a mural. So I posted on our public page that we were looking for an artist that was willing to donate their art abilities to paint our irrigation box. And it turned out to be a friend of mine, Rachel, who really wanted that task. And she spent 9 hours out there one day painting the box. And the season matures. And we even have flowers in the middle of the winter. So
Wow.
that really was just a nice
Beautification.
addition. We felt that just really pulled things together. We weren't really sure initially what to do with it. So the reason we wanted to do this is I'm a beekeeper, and I'm aware that there are problems with the native pollinators, a lot of it having to do with loss of habitat. And the fact that we continue to build and take away farm ground and take away just treed areas, they've lost their ability to find, in some cases, pollen and nectar sources. So that was a big one. The pesticides are a big problem, and we were absolutely thrilled to see what Boise was doing to just do that. We are a organic garden, and so that's a no-spray area. Some say climate changes, non-native species, and then infectious agents like new diseases and pathogens. And so this actually came from a talk I met with a biologist recently and was in a class of hers, and these are what they're seeing as to why. So we wanted to be able to help that, because in our time at the garden and with the flowers that we've planted, we've noticed more and more pollinators. And the pictures that you've seen are pictures I've taken in the garden. We've seen a huge increase, especially in the bumblebees, and that's been probably my favorite thing. We have, going across the top left to right with the orange flower, a bumble, a blister beetle, a skipper, a swallowtail, a wasp, I think a couple of bees all the way across. My pride and joy, that little butt picture of that bee is just super, super cute. We've got a locust borer, not necessarily a friendly one. Hummingbirds, we've got a couple of pairs that have been coming to visit. And this tricolored bumblebee is by far one of my favorites, another type of wasp. We've seen carpenter bees, we've seen mason bees, we've seen sweat bees. We can walk through that garden almost at any time and identify probably 15 to 20 different pollinators. Along with that project, we were planning to plant 6 fruit trees. We happened to find basically 10 holes, which was really nice. So we have 1 plum, 1 cherry, 2 peach, 2 pear, and 4 apple trees that are planted out there. And we recognize that there are some challenges. 1, trying to do fruit trees organically. 2, keeping them managed. We had a fruit tree pruning class. We did 3 fruit tree pruning classes this fall and early winter. They were hands-on classes, and so they were for our members along with anybody from the public that wanted to come and take a class. Our friend Ian on the left works for one of the local tree services in town, and he has really just done a terrific job studying up on that and did a fabulous job teaching that to all of us. This was just one of the classes one day in that winter. This project was made possible by so many people. First, City of Meridian, we just commend you on even allowing it to happen. Girl Scouts of Silver Sage, they were not a part of the grant. They came to me after we had received the grant and handed me $500, Troop 232, and they wanted us to do something. So because of them, we were able to build the retaining wall, that wasn't even in part of the plan. We didn't think of those things ahead of time. Idaho Botanical Gardens, of course, gave us the grant, the 979. 5 Mile Farm and Greenhouses has always been supportive of everything that we do. The Nature Company, Ian Compton, Jan Haneke, she's our master gardener. Bob Bartholomew and Leah, they've been connected to this garden from the beginning because it was their daughter, Katie, that started the garden. Jeremy and Tammy Rampton were people that used to be a part of the garden, and they donated 3 rather mature trees. Rachel donated the painting job on the irrigation box. There were others. And then I have to tell you, we have a logo. It's really exciting that we have this logo. And that was designed and given to us by Kelly Knopp. He's a well-known artist in the community. And we just so happened to have somebody join the garden this year whose parents own an apparel printing shop, and we're having hats and T-shirts made. So
Nice.
we're really excited about that. Anyway, meet Girl Scout Troop 232. This was our, what do you call it when you first dig in the dirt? So they were the first ones to get to dig in that area and to be a part of this project. These girls worked really hard selling cookies last year. So if you don't support your Girl Scouts and you think $5 a box is too much, let me tell you, they do great things with the money that they earn. What's next? I dream big. We're expanding the existing pollinator garden and adding educational signage. So we're expanding that to the north. We don't have too far to go, but we're actually taking down 2 trees, and we were waiting for Elroy to leave so he wouldn't chain himself to those trees. We just thought that might happen. And we'll actually use part of the stump and drill the stump to make that a livable home for some of the pollinators. We have ordered, with the help of the remaining grant money, about $600, $300 from, how do I back up? Do we know how to back up? I didn't tell you, pay it forward. My gardeners nominated me for a Channel 2 and Mountain America Pay It Forward Award, and I was given $500.
Nice.
And they all thought I should take a vacation. And of course, that's not what I do with any extra money I have. I spend it on the garden. And so with the City of Meridian's help and the artist who did the design work and the signs for the pollinator garden in Bee City USA and Garden City, we have ordered a 22 by 40 educational sign along with 2 smaller signs. They should be here, I'm hoping, in 6 to 7 weeks. We had a little complication trying to coordinate. I coordinated with Dusty Perkins, who's a biologist at CWI, and that allowed us to save some setup charges and some shipping charges. So the goal was just to try to make that as cheap as possible. So using some of that pay it forward money, we were able to afford this sign. Education. It is just foremost in my mind. So one, we have fun educating the public on our public page, but we're attending a lot of events. Bee City USA over in Garden City is doing a terrific job, and they do that in the spring, and they offer classes, free classes every month with just terrific people. Matter of fact, their first Tuesdays, the one in April will be on honeybees, which they normally don't do, but they're doing one on honeybees with a panel if you're interested. They're 6:15, I believe, downtown at their city hall. But the one in May will be amazing, and it's the man who did the book called Bees. I think his last name is Wilson. It should be excellent. We keep talking about a permanent shade structure out there. We would love something. We've got some temporary ones that pop up all the time that the fire department had given us the money for. Berries and grapes would be a great idea, but where, I don't know. One of the problems we have, and it might be a problem for the trees, is the overhead watering. So if we're out in the park anywhere, it's overhead watering, and that's not necessarily a good thing for those plants. So one of my bigger dreams, and Mike, I haven't even talked to you about this, but I think big, more permanent habitat around the garden, less grass, more planted for pollinators, less mowing, all of that stuff. And I just started envisioning this 6-foot or bigger area that goes all the way around the outside of our fence. So I just start thinking, because we'll have plants that we can divide and we can add things in there. And then one I've been approached about is it looks like we could have a community garden and duplicate what we're doing in Discovery Park maybe in 3 years. The problem is just finding somebody that would want to maybe partner with us to be able to do that. And it would be fun to make that like Meridian Co-op Gardeners 2. So we would be on the same page and we would work exactly the way we've worked with you now. So you're not trying to do that all over again. This is the sign. This is half of the sign. I couldn't get it all on one page. So this gives you an idea. It's going to help people find out that this garden is for pollinators, and this is what you're doing and why you should care and how you can help. And then the second page is going to be plants that we currently have planted in that garden that are labeled, along with a list of all the people that partnered with us to make this possible. Thank you. Questions?
Do we have any questions from the commission? Or members of the Parks Department staff, I should say, as well?
Thanks.
So, Julie, thank you so much for the wonderful update. Thank you so much to you and to the community co-op gardeners for everything you do for our community, for the food banks, for the environmental stewardship aspect. I mean, the thank yous could go on and on and on and on, but they don't do justice. And you know, I'm excited to see what is going on. I'm excited to see all the new updates and revisions. What is a call to action that you could have for us as a commission going forward? How can we continue to support you and the community garden better?
You know, I just fully appreciate your support. I mean, I took over this garden without plans to take over this garden, and it's just been amazing to watch it grow. And I think I shared with you last year, the first couple of years, I asked permission for everything, right? Now I just sort of ask for forgiveness if I sort of, do something a little bit much. I mean, we just sort of take it one step at a time. Mike is just amazing to work with. Wade and Dan out at the park are just absolutely incredible. And we couldn't do it without the help that we get, and the help seems to happen. It's happening now. The rocks down here at the bottom were recently removed, I think with plans to refresh those. I'm not sure what direction that's fully taking, but they were removed. We're having water installed over by the pollinator garden. We didn't have a spout over there, so that's hoping to be dug this week. So that was a big deal. Having these trees cut down is a big deal. Being able to just expand that little bit. I look at that garden and it just doesn't look finished to me. I just feel like it needs to go a little bit more that way. So, and I think education's a big part of this. When I talked to Dan the other day, I was explaining why we were doing certain things certain ways. And I think a big part of it is education. And I think the more education we can give our community, the more they begin to understand things. And just like Mr. Kessner was talking about, when you start planting native plants and you start planting for pollinators, you take care of things differently. So you don't chop everything down in the fall. You wait until the end of March, first part of April to do that, so you allow them the habitat that they need. And so it's kind of changing a lot of mindsets. When you think about using pesticides, when you think about using herbicides, it's sort of a challenge to educate the public, but by doing so, I think we make a lot of footsteps forward to do that. So we'll just keep doing what we're doing, and we're just glad that you guys are there to listen to what we're doing, and we just love your input and absolutely love what they allow me to do. Yeah.
Mr. President.
Councilman Hoagland.
Yeah, if I might say, Julie, this is wonderful what you're doing. I was previously served on the council when folks came forward and said, hey, could it be possible to start a community garden at KLEINER Park? And I remember the discussions that we had. And, you're asking a group of volunteers, or volunteers are willing to do this, but you just don't know, is this going to be sustainable? Are they going to take care of it? Because it's a lot of work, recruiting and getting people to do it. And you came on board, and that's just fantastic to see this growth and the dedication you put into it. And my wife, we were out there this fall during peak season. It's when things are just really doing awesome. And she happens to be a master gardener, and she was just amazed at the things that were being grown out there, like all gardeners do. Well, how's this compared to mine, and how big is that, and different things. And it's good to see your husband is like me. We're just the muscle for our wives. That's all we are.
There you go.
Okay, I dig holes, I move dirt, so yeah, I get that. But thank you for spearheading this and making this wonderful asset to our community happen. It's really wonderful to see.
You're welcome. Thank you. Yeah, very much.
One last quick comment. I know that the Heritage Building down the block from us will be serving, the very top of the Heritage Building will be serving as a beekeeping quote-unquote sanctuary, the Hop House new owner, Cody, is going to designate and has received approval from Mr. Everts of the vault to use that roof of the Heritage Building as a beekeeping section
Nice.
and area. So we'll have a new beekeeping area just a couple blocks down from us.
Perfect. I
So,
love that. Yeah, actually rooftop beekeeping is a pretty popular thing, especially over in Europe. You'll see a lot more of that. I still would love bees in the garden, but I completely understand the liability having bees over in the garden and near a shelter. So we've gotten past that. We're okay with that.
Mr. President?
Thanks.
Yes, Commissioner Bobo.
With the fruit trees, I didn't quite catch where are they planted?
Oh, they are planted, let's see if I can
In
just.
the garden, outside of the garden?
They are just outside of the garden, but I'll just go back here to this map. I just figured the only way you guys would experience
Yeah.
that was just to see it from beginning to end, because
Yes, that was a nice
it
touch.
just gives you a feel for how empty that spot was.
And are they available, the fruit, once it becomes the season?
So the fruit will be, so the garden is, here in this
Right.
red area, this right here, that's the garden, and the fence, and the trees are planted all along that area. So just outside the black fence is where they're planted.
So then would it be the intention of just the park goers to swing by and grab a piece of fruit, or how?
Well, the
what's
hope
plan?
is that through our education, that they'll realize they're a part of Meridian Co-op Gardeners, and that food will help feed those in need.
Okay.
So that's the hope. We realize that things could become ripe and get picked overnight, and we'll show up and it'll be gone. But we really hope that people seem to fully respect what we do out there. We have very few problems out there. We've had one, where we had somebody come and damage
rabbit.
watermelon. But other than that, I mean, we just don't. So, and we're surprised because, the one garden last year was stolen from a community garden behind a church, and somebody came in and just stripped it. And so we're thankful because we're not locked doors. People have access through that park all the time, yeah. But people seem to really like what we do, yeah.
Yes, I've been to the gardens. They are beautiful. I just wondered if the trees were outside, if people would really understand that that's
They may or may
part of
not,
it.
yeah. So, I mean, it'll just be through some education. And sometimes I think the more I advertise it, then maybe there's more chance somebody's going to pick it. But we want people to know what we're doing because we think it's a really big deal that the city allowed us to plant trees out there. And it wasn't an easy task. The trees that are planted out there in that arboretum area and maybe in other areas of the park, they dig 9-foot holes. Those holes are huge, and then they're backfilled with sand and compost to make those trees grow. So anyway, we're just excited to see how they go. Everything's budding out beautifully right now. We're hoping they don't flower yet because we've got some freezing temperatures coming, but anyway, yeah. Thank you so much.
One final quick question, Julie, on the trees. Now that Commissioner Bobo mentioned it, it kind of sparked a light bulb. When we consider pollinators, we think initially as bees and insects, but birds can often serve as pollinators. What strategic plan have we considered? Let's say birds start coming and picking at the fruit on the fruit trees, they spit out the seeds or the seeds get lost in consumption of the fruit and they fall amongst the grass or the different
Sure.
sections of the park. Once they germinate,
Well, we don't fully know that. What we do know is we run this community garden completely differently from most community gardens because we realize we're in the middle of this absolutely perfectly manicured park. And so we may end up having to put netting over to keep birds from doing that. There's just a number of different possibilities. We'll have to see. I think the main tree I would worry about for that might be the cherry tree. That one may have a little bit more than that. It was interesting, at the seminar I was at last week, I learned, I don't think it's specifically here in the United States, but 88% of beetles are 88% of pollinators of 240,000 plants. So it's not even really honeybees. It's,
Right.
I mean, beetles do the majority of a lot of work, which is amazing. But no, I know that we might have some bird problems and we don't know completely what that looks like, but we're pretty responsible. We still have sheriff's detail coming in. They help us clean a lot of those areas out, and we identify that pretty well.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Julie, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Jensen, did you have a question? Commissioner Steele, do you have any questions?
No, I don't. Thank
Wonderful.
you, Julie.
Thanks,
Wonderful.
Greg.
Julie, thank you so much. We look forward
Thank you,
to
Mr.
having you
President.
back.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Next item, we have old business, Discovery Park Phase 2 Design and Construction Timing Update from our very own Mike Barton, Park Superintendent. Mike, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President, Commission. Wanted to give you an update on Discovery Park. We've been started design mid-October, and we've been to the commission at least once, maybe twice, I think, to show updates to you and keep you informed of the design. And I'm here this evening to deliver some awkward news. We've made a decision to delay any further design work at this point and postpone construction, obviously. And the reason for that decision is the area in South Meridian is rapidly changing right now. It's really underdeveloped. There currently isn't any sewer to the site. There is no pedestrian connectivity right now. The roads are under-improved. The intersections are under-improved. There's currently a couple of gas lines that run diagonally through the site that we've talked about before that are owned and operated by the Williams Pipeline. One of those pipes is an 18-inch gas line that was put in the 80s. There's another one that's a 24-inch gas line that was put in the 50s. The one that was put into the 50s is likely going to be replaced. The timeline to do that is sometime in the next 2 years. So that presents some challenges with working alongside that effort and over the top of it, and we didn't want to get ahead of them. They kind of they have their own schedule. They're not going to accelerate that schedule because of any plans that we may or may not have. So really what our plans are at this point is to just pump the brakes on the design. We don't want to get too much farther along in the process and possibly pick that up next year in the winter time. We may push that out even another year. So Discovery Park right now is likely, the construction of Discovery Park is likely going to be delayed or at least postponed out 2 years past where we originally thought it was. So that'll give the area time to kind of catch up, catch its breath. One of the other challenges that we know of firsthand is that the construction environment right now is not conducive to really good pricing. I mean, we try to kind of hedge some of that by bidding in the winter and some of those things, but the fact of the matter is it's just expensive to do stuff right now. So that's kind of where we stand. I wanted to just come and have a conversation with you and give you the news that we will not be making a budget request this season for construction next year, and likely we will not do it the next year as well. So one of the other things that is a little bit up in the air is some of the property tax conversations that are going on in the legislature right now with freezing budgets. And although the park construction is built with impact fees, the operating cost to run a park like that require additional budget from the general fund, and we just don't know where that's going to land right now with that. So all roads kind of led to a joint decision to just put this on hold for a little while, focus on other things like pathways, and we've got plenty to do, and we're going to attack that stuff pretty hard. So I guess with that, I'll stand for questions.
Do we have any
Mr. President.
Commissioner Jensen.
So Mike, Steve, given the shift, what is the strategic plan for working up? I mean, we've had a lot of conversations about impact fees, increasing impact fees in order to keep up with our part per thousand, So if we're gonna put a halt on this, which I completely agree, Mike. I can see your point exactly. Where are these other areas beyond pathways that we've talked quite a bit about that we're looking to potentially improve Fuller Park? Is that the thought? What are we thinking?
Yeah, so impact fees right now can't be used for pathway construction.
Okay.
It's only to improve property that we own. All the property that we own right now is kind of in the same position that this one is. The Borat property that's on Cherry Lane, there's no sewer there.
Yeah.
There's no water there. We would have to bring water about a half mile down Cherry Lane. And some of those roads out there are under-improved as well. We did talk about that specifically. So with the impact fees that we're collecting, we have a certain amount of time to spend them. We know that we will not delay any of those projects to the point where we have to return that money. So we're going to be, well positioned to build some major parks here in a couple of years, and so the money won't go away.
Okay, that's my concern.
Yeah.
The only thing I would add to your question, you were asking about acres per thousand, and I think the reality is we will lose ground for a little while on our acres per thousand calculation with the intent of making that ground back up when the infrastructure catches up in a way that we can kick these loose again. So we will continue to accumulate impact fees, and we will still have park projects to spend them on before the finish line of when we have to spend them.
Okay.
So they will get spent. We will add parks. We're just pressing the pause button.
Yeah. I just
Yeah.
don't want to lose the money.
Nope, we're not doing that.
Any further questions from the commission? Hearing none. Mike, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mike, one quick thing actually. Remember, I wanted to extend appreciation for you having joined the Meridian Mayor's Youth Advisory Council and had the MIACers give their input on the future of Discovery Park as well. That was, speaking from an advisor of MIAC, I'd like to extend that appreciation from the kids.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Finally, we have our staff reports from the Parks Department staff. Steve, take it away.
Mr. President, Commissioners, busy time of year, lots of balls in the air. I'm just going to mention 4. One, it's budget season, and we are very actively working on our budgets. I've had multiple meetings with our council liaison, Brad Hoagland. We have our base budget meeting with the mayor and finance coming up later this month. And we are actively working on just the budgets and what they call detailed fixed costs and what our enhancements might be and how our comprehensive financial planning looks out for future years. And lots moving there, and still some unanswered questions with how what's coming down from the legislature that we will need to respond to quickly when it does finally settle. But very, very busy with budgets right now. The second one I wanted to mention is the community center. So the community center project we continue to work on, although we are not working on design yet, so I still don't have a design update. The design is on hold while we're working on other issues related specifically to uses on the site. In addition to the community center use, we're trying to look at additional uses like housing or other, office, commercial type uses, but things that could help generate the TIF revenue, if you will, on that site. So we're still working with the developers and actively working on that. Last night at City Council, there was a presentation and a resolution approved for the plan for the urban renewal district that would be created. So plans continue to move forward. Garrett and I will be leaving next Monday, driving, not flying, to go down to Utah. We have 6 different community center tours set up with some gracious hosts down there that have agreed to let us come and visit their projects. And we have a long list of questions and things that we hope to learn next week while we're down there. So that continues to move forward. The city has a strategic plan process underway. So we adopted a 5-year plan 4 years ago, and this is the last year plan for that. Last night at City Council, I did a closeout presentation for our last objective in the current strategic plan. And we've already had a couple of meetings. I have another meeting tomorrow on the formation of the new strategic plan. So we are actively working on that, and tomorrow's focus is on the mission and vision and focus areas, and I hope to see parks, art, culture, recreation type things featured there. So I'll be attempting to do my part to keep that front and center as it has been in the past. I think the last thing I want to mention is we are actively monitoring the coronavirus COVID-19 situation. We are still operating with business as usual in terms of our plans to host classes, camps, events, having people at the home court. Although we are actively monitoring what comes from the state as they give us the risk levels. There is a very active emergency management planning team with the city led by our fire department, and they are in contact with the Central District Health, and Department of Health, CDC, and others that are the experts on this. So we take our cues from them, and hoping for the best, preparing for the worst, and but we're still understand that there's currently no confirmed cases in Idaho. Idaho as a state is still considered at a low risk overall. So we're definitely taking precautions and planning and preparing, but still, as for now, moving forward with business as usual operations and monitoring the situation. So with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Wonderful. Mike and I are pretty known germaphobes, so this is something we've been preparing for our entire lives. I mean, I'm surprised Mike isn't at Costco right now buying out all the hand sanitizer. So
They don't have any.
Right. Commissioner Jensen.
So Steve, thank you for that update, by the way, because I was going to actually ask you that question. The secondary question to that, though, is are we seeing an impact, and maybe this is a better question for Garrett, are we seeing an impact of community events wanting to utilize our parks because of concern around large gatherings? I know as we're coming into this spring, and this is the time when we start having tournaments and car shows at the park and other things like that. Are we seeing any impact? Are we getting any advice from the health department on how we should handle those things?
Mr. President, Commissioner Jensen, I'm getting, the external events are asking me,
Right.
hey,
Yeah,
does
not
the city
our-
have
not our
something
stuff,
in?
external.
Yeah, does the city have something in place for, to act on? And right now, our answer is, we're kind of going as is, we're monitoring all that stuff, we're relying on our fire department and other city resources to kind of help monitor that. And if we need to, we will have a plan for that. But right now, it's just kind of, we're going through the same process as we would normally, and just monitoring the situation. I don't know if Steve has something to add on to that.
I think that's exactly right. So we have been had a conversation this afternoon with the fire chief. He sent me the CDC current guidelines for community gatherings and events. We reviewed those. So basically, it is plan ahead, but still for now we're not requiring anything to cancel. Like like I say, we are business as usual, but we know that could change so we have to be prepared to cancel if we're so instructed as risk levels rise. But other than putting people on notice that have contingency plans, for now, we are still accepting those applications.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me, thank you. Any further questions? Comments, concerns? Wonderful. With that, before we adjourn, I'd like to mention for the record, our next meeting will be, I'm sorry.
Can we go to Mike and Garrett first?
Sorry, I thought we had already.
That's okay, I'll be fast. We hired a new city arborist. His name is Matt Perkins, and he started on February 24th. So he'll be here at a meeting soon. I don't know. We don't want to throw him into the fire too quick. So we're getting him going and closing out those art projects and budgets. And the story walk at KLEINER around the pond at the senior center is finished. The library is planning to do a ribbon cutting. They're working on a date. We don't have that yet, but it's finished. And we're going to retrofit the lights at Discovery Park, change the HID lights out that were really bright for LED lights. We got some pretty significant Idaho Power rebates and better pricing on LEDs, so we're going to make that swap, and that's due to kick off here in about a week or so. As long as they can get a crane out on the grass, it doesn't rain too much, we'll be pulling those lights down and switching them out. So those are some of the things I'm working on.
Thank you. Garrett?
All right, Mr. President and members of the commission. Sports, I'll just kind of go through the list here, but sports, we're just finishing up a basketball season as well as volleyball season, and we just had a registration deadline for our volleyball and softball seasons. So all that stuff's happening. We have 120 volleyball teams, which is our max. We have 108 softball teams, which is a max, and we have a waiting list on for both, and that's so numbers are still going strong on that. So Maggie's also taking registrations for the Summer Fun Kickoff Tournament with the girls fast pitch tournament over Memorial Day weekend. So she's starting to take registrations, advertisements for that. Classes and camps, Jenna is just working on a lot of guide stuff, getting that guide ready to go and it'll be published in April. But on top of that, she is working all of our summer stuff. She's planning all the summer camp locations, and really just hiring staff is a real big priority for her on that. Events with Renee, she's working on sponsorships constantly, movie night, Unplug and Be Outside, Kleiner Park concert series, and just planning. You know, she hasn't mentioned Christmas yet, so I haven't said much, but I'm sure she's planning for it. Arts and culture, Audrey's doing a phenomenal job. She's brand new, and Dom, you may have interacted with her with MIAC and things like that. She just got done doing the murder mystery MIAC event. She said it was awesome. Absolutely loved it. She said she had a lot of fun with that. She's been working obviously with the City Hall, the gallery upstairs, and concerts on Broadway. So home court, Jake's working on facility scheduling, invoicing, hiring staff, and kind of doing the staff schedules there. But he's also scheduling the curtains that divide each court to be replaced. And that project should happen starting in June, and hopefully a couple weeks be done with that and go. Our front desk staff, Vicki and Jeanette, have been just awesome as well, taking registrations. It's been a very, very busy time with all the registration deadlines and people coming in. On top of that, as you guys know, as the weather gets a little bit better, our fields are being used more, our shelters are starting to get used, and we're starting to ramp up for the heavy season, the summer season. That leads to myself, and I've been doing a lot of field reservations. Now all the youth sports practices have started, so I'm getting blown up. My phone's blowing up anyways regarding what fields or what can I use, where's a good spot, and we're full. All of our stuff is full. External events, like I kind of mentioned before, just working with them and scheduling stuff throughout the summer. Obviously, some of these big events are planning year-round, so it's just kind of keeping in contact with them. The first ones are coming up here in April, obviously, with Easter being the 11th and 12th that weekend. We have a egg drop from a helicopter at J-Bill, and then we have obviously the big KLEINER Capital Christian Easter egg hunt out there. So those are the big ones that are coming forward too. So I've been working with our park staff, letting our park staff kind of know what's going on as well. Steve mentioned budgets and community center stuff. So a lot of those items have been on my desk as well. So that's what I've got. So I'll stand for questions if you have any.
Do we have any questions for the commission, from the commission for Mike or Garrett's updates tonight? Hearing none, just want to wish you both safe travels to Utah, and we're excited to hear what you hear back, what you learn and bring back to our next commission meeting. With that, I want to go back into for the record, our next meeting on Wednesday, April 8th will be a non-traditional meeting, whereas we won't be in the city council chambers. We will be on our annual Spring Pathways Tour. So we will not be meeting here. We will be meeting at the next designated location. And so with that, Steve?
I was just looking over at Kim to see if she had any additional updates, but I would maybe just interject so I don't have to interrupt again later. But I think given the conversation about pathway priorities and things that I've heard tonight, maybe to close the loop, I think as we put together our route, we will look at the projects. We'll make sure we get to South Meridian. But I think we might just, I'll work with Kim and Mike, and we'll kind of identify where those stories exist that we want to hit on that are either some of the existing projects. For example, I'm thinking of James Court that we might get a quick update on here. But, if there's something to see there, maybe we go by. But we also, I think that we might take a look at some of the current projects we've been talking about a lot, but a focus might be on these future projects just to gather some feedback. And I have a feeling, given how spread out they are, we might focus on a van tour as opposed to riding bikes, and I'd just like to know if that's okay with you.
Works for us.
Okay.
Absolutely. Kim?
Mr. President, Commissioners, if you're not tired of hearing from me, I have just a couple of updates on ongoing projects in the field. Just a little nod to Mike, who's helped with a bit of expediting and coordination on those since the park got a little more still. So I do appreciate those little bits of facilitation to help this move along. We did meet on site at James Court, just east of Fairview at Bud Porter. With ACHD, ACHD is in the midst of widening Meridian Road. It's kind of a mess, maybe some of you have noticed. But we had our contractor just talk timing. We have a 6-month contract, and the start date, I think, is April 7th. So he's got a pretty long window. We need to coordinate with ACHD. It shouldn't be too difficult. We're still waiting for final paperwork on that last easement at Meridian Road, but as far as we know, it's on its way. So that one's really coming together and about to get started. Pine Avenue Rest Stop, it's the same contractor. Last night, our license agreement with ACHD should have been on the council consent agenda. So we have a license agreement, a contractor, and a price, and that little project will also start. I don't have a date on that, but probably concurrent with this other. That's where the 5-mile pathway coming down from Fairview, we call it the H2 segment, where it crosses Pine, and there's an ACHD property with a drainage basin. So that one's moving along. And Fairview Avenue, the connection from the H2 over to Lakes Avenue. Plans were submitted to ACHD, I think, yesterday. So I just printed off a construction set today. The consultant's telling me they're about 8 weeks turnaround to get the review set back. So hopefully we will have only minor changes, if any. We're going to bid that as soon as possible. Mike did coordinate with Crystal, I don't remember her last name, about CDBG funding. I guess this project qualifies within the area that it needed to be. So we have that project funded, not through our Pathways budget, but through this other source. So our aim is to bid it as soon as possible. spend our 2020 money this fall with the construction start, and then use the 2021 funds to finish up next year. So, yeah, that one is poised to go as well. Is there anything to add on that, Mike? I don't think so. I will also let you know that I've been coordinating with ACHD. They're leading a North Meridian bike ped plan to kind of focus on connectivity. I wasn't able to make the first meeting, but will be involved in that, as is Caleb with community planning. So we've been coordinating locations for them to put some informational signs. You might look for them. They're going to be seeking community input, and if that's something you're interested in, we could forward information as we get it, or you can just take it off of their posted signs, so maybe keep an eye out for that. And that's all I have for now. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kim. And just for the record, for those unfamiliar with the acronym CDBG, could you elaborate on that, please?
I don't know a lot about it, but I do know that it's a community development block grant program. It's been around quite a while, but the specifics would have to come from someone else.
Wonderful. No, thank you. Just wanted to
Sure.
clarify what the acronym
Yeah,
stood for.
That's a good question. I forget.
Wonderful. Any further questions, comments from the commission, members of the department? Hearing none, would love to have a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting at 7:39. Do I have a motion?
Mr. President,
Commissioner Steele,
I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn tonight's meeting.
we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Mr. President, I second.
Commissioner Jensen seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Wonderful. We are adjourned. Thank you.